Good morning, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Tech Talk Live. This is Tech Talk Live number 117, so we're getting up there. Today, I'm joined, as always, with Francesco Corti, our developer evangelist, and Alexandru Epure. I'll let them introduce themselves in just a second. I do have a handful of announcements that I want to go over at the beginning today. So let me share my screen so you guys can see. One sec.
Yes, okay now.
You see the whole thing? Okay, cool. So we have a lot of events going on right now. So if you happen to be in Rome tonight, we do have a meetup today. Thank you to David for hosting. Francesco will be there presenting. Our next meetup scheduled is for October 18th, actually. So that's quite a ways away, and that will be in London. That's being hosted by Zizi. Now, if you want to host a meetup, please reach out to Francesco or myself. We have some ways to support you on that. We'll help with marketing, we'll help with swag, we'll help with cost. We just need local folks to help plan the logistics for the events. So reach out to us if you want to host one. I also want to say that every Thursday we're continuing to do our office hours. 2-3 weeks ago now, we changed the format of office hours. It's no more presentations, no more slides, just come join. It's a Zoom chat, so it's a video chat with members of the Alfresco team, members of the Alfresco community, whoever wants to come and chat. You can bring a problem you'd like to discuss. You can bring a topic for things you'd like to hear feedback on. We're joined by a range of people depending on availability. So we have product development, product management, marketing has been there. University was there last week. So come, ask questions, get to know the Alfresco team and the other community members. I think tomorrow we're hoping to discuss some things about the new add-on space. We're hoping to discuss a few things about DevCon. We're hoping to talk about meetups. So please come with questions, ideas. Speaking of DevCon, we have announced DevCon. You can go to devcon.alfresco.com for all the details, but it will be next January. So January 29th to 31st, and that will be in Edinburgh. We would love for everybody to be there. Our call for papers is currently open, so we're accepting papers from now until September. I believe it's September 8th is the end of call for papers. So please put a paper in. The links are on the website. If you have questions about what you'd like to submit, Francesco and I are more than happy to talk to you about topics that we think would do well. You also should check out the YouTube page where we have a list of all of the sessions that were at the last DevCon. And I can let you know what was popular. We had really, really great content last year. So I would definitely look at that for examples of things that people would like to see. Let me stop screen sharing. So those are all our events. Again, Tech Talk Live today, office hours tomorrow, lots of meetups, and then DevCon in January. I'll hand it over now. Francesco, if you want to say a quick hello.
Thank you, Kristen. Helpful as usual. Yeah, my name is Francesco Corti, product evangelist for Alfresco. Probably you can hear some echo, but I'm in the room ready for the meetup this evening. Let me remind this. I will check for me and Kristen. We will check for the question for today's presentation on the YouTube chat, on the RC channel, but brand new, we have also the Discord chat. That is the channel that we are testing and evaluating to replace the RC chat if we can, and we are all agree, of course. So I will check the question also there. So I won't waste any more time. I will leave the mic to the real content that today is really, really interesting about the development of the new ACS 6 platform using Docker. So welcome, Alexandru. If you want to introduce yourself, I will leave you the mic and the stage.
Thank you, Francesco. First of all, hello, nice to see you here. My name is Alexandru Epure. I started my career here in Alfresco, I think it was 2 years ago. I'm a junior Java developer, and in the past few months, I've been working into the repository team on the deployment part. And in deployment, the new deployment mechanism, how to migrate amps to 6.0, and how to install amps. So I'm going to share my screen. First of all, we're going to start with a short presentation over the content of today. So the 6.0 migration for amps. We're going to first migrate an amp to Alfresco 6.0. We're going to install that amp on a Docker image. We're going to start Alfresco in debug mode because I think this is very useful when you have problems. And we're going to run some integration tests on the AMP that we've just installed. Next slide. Okay, here. The prerequisites. So we actually need the JDK 1.8. We need Maven 3.3 at least, and Docker. I recommend the latest version. Some useful links here. We actually have 2 blog posts by my colleague Stefan Kopf. One is the anatomy of an AMP project, and the other one is actually the migration process, which we're going to do today and add some extra to there. For how to install amps, we have into the ACS packaging project, into a docs folder, we have some MD files that contain valuable information on how to do this. We actually have 2 ways of installing amps, and we're going through both of them. And there's another file that you should start with. That is how to customize your Alfresco deployment. How to start Alfresco in debug mode, just to point, that is as simple as adding in Docker Compose. So we're going to use Docker Compose today. We're recommending Docker Compose only for development and testing. And is as simple as adding in Docker Compose under the environment column, under the Catalina ops, add this line and the port 80,000, and that's all. And how it happens in life, usually when you look into the documentation, you get a simple thing. Somebody shows a demo and it's a little bit complicated, but when you are actually going to do this on a real product, it will be, the unexpected will strike there, I'm sure, but this is a good point of starting. So let's go to the fun part, to the demo. Okay. We're going to start with, as I said, a blog post, anatomy of an ACS 6 AMP project. What I have created today is here, using the Alfresco SDK. This is the master branch. I have created an this is an repository AMP. I've named it suggestively demo AMP. I've added this AMP into an IDE. And we're going to use IntelliJ today for that. And we are going to here. Well, not the anatomy, sorry, the migration one. And we're going to take the steps that are here. First, we're going to remove everything that is from the old SDK. So we're going to start to remove the, I'm not sure if this works like this, hopefully. Do I have enough screen size? Okay, so we are in the demo amp, the POM file, and let's say that hopefully it's visible enough.
Yes,
so
I think it's visible. No problem. I can read it quite well. I hope also the people, but we can read it well.
Okay, so we're going to start from step 1. We're going to remove the SDK reference. And it's gone now. Let's continue on, go on to step 2, which is remove the dependency management, which we will see that is actually here. Again, this is starting to become fun. Let's continue with removing the H2 database artifacts. Okay, let's enable auto import here. This should be the H2 database artifacts. Okay, proceeding next. We need to clean up the project. In this case, we do not have any properties, but what we can do here is actually clean the comments just to have a clearer code here. 1 second, this. I'm going to remove the profile sections because I don't think we'll use it today. And what should we do now is start adding the new things that we're going to use. So without the SDK. We're going to add the Alfresco Maven plugin, as it's stated here. Because we don't have the SDK, Maven won't know how to pack this as an amp. So we're going to do a copy paste from here, only the build section. Okay. Add it into our POM. Correct the typo here, which is a slash is missing. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to make this code a little bit cleaner. I'm going to add then C. And I'm going to get all the versions of the artifacts that we're going to use. I'm going to put them as properties because they will be easier in the future to upgrade if it's needed. Maven. And let's go to a new version like 2.2.0 and not 2.1 here. Let's put the version here. Okay, we need to add another property, which is the amp output folder. Put it here. Okay, we're going to continue. We will need, because previously in the SDK you have all the imports like Alfresco repository, the remote API, and on other artifacts. For this, because it's a simple amp, we'll need only the Alfresco repository and the Alfresco remote API, and we're going to add these two dependencies. I'm actually going to delete this one. Then I'm going to, this is harder on a smaller screen. I'm going to add as properties the versions, Alfresco repository version. I'm not going to add any values there because we're going to look onto Nexus and see the search and use the latest values. Remote API version. Okay. Another thing here is to add the Alfresco public repository, which is our Nexus. We're going to add this here into our POM. And because I said we're going to look up for the latest version of repository and remote API, we're going to go on to Nexus. Here, a new tab. I'll close this one. And they should be under org, but with small letters. They should be org, Alfresco, and I search for Alfresco repository. And this, and scroll a little bit down to see the latest version. It seems like it should be 6.55. Okay, let's do this for the here, and also for the remote API. We're going to search again for the latest version. I recommend on using the latest version all the time. Since Alfresco 6.0, each artifact has its own life cycle and can be released 6.38, I think.
Sorry, Alex. One question is related. I interrupt you because it's related to this.
Yes.
To this part. Why are you using the Alfresco Maven plugin 2.0 instead of 3.0?
So actually, we are this version of Maven plugin is the one that we use in. I think it's an enterprise amp. I'm not sure what it's new in 3.0. I think it will work. Maybe we can try that. The 2.1 version was a little bit older, and I had problems with it in the past. So we upgraded to 2.2. long time ago, I think. Let's go to Maven. Let's go Maven plugin. I'm not sure the latest version. Maven plugin from. Let's go to Nexus again. Yeah, so it won't be a problem going through using the 3.0 version.
Okay, so probably the answer is you tested using the
Yes.
the 2 dot something, but it should work also with the latest, of course.
Yes.
So no measure. So we are not aware about something that shouldn't work with the latest version, of course. Right?
Yes, you're right here.
Okay.
I'm going to use 2.2 in this demo. It should work just as fine with the latest version. Where it was here. So we added the latest versions, and the next step is to refactor your code where required. I can make this full screen right now. Let's open an CMD and see if this AMP will work. Well, we'll try a MV and clean install with we don't want to run. So actually, I should have shown earlier that the basic AMP that the SDK produces, it actually has a web script. So when you install it on Alfresco, we will able to see this web script. And it has a simple class that has free integrate. These are actually integration tests that use this demo component. It was expected to fail because we need to refactor the demo component test class. Here we have, so let's go to the errors. So we cannot resolve some symbols. This is because we are missing some artifacts. And as we can see into the imports, we're missing Spring, and we're missing JUnit. So if we go back into the POM, not sure if they are here, if Spring is added here. No, Spring is not into the this blog post, but we can add this dependency here where it is. This is the JUnit. We're going to add another property with the version of the JUnit. We're going to use 4.12. So again, I've taken these versions from maybe a little bit older projects that we use. AMP project, sorry. And they work. And we need to add Spring to this one because, as I said in the past, usually the SDK contained all of these dependencies, all of these versions required. So we've added JUnit and Spring. And if we go into the demo component class, we still have some imports that cannot be resolved. I think it's safe to remove this. And now we can switch to the blog post. Actually, there are two ways of going with this. You can even keep the remote test runner in this class and simply add the dependencies required for it, or we can switch to a JUnit test configuration like this. And I've chose to go with the JUnit configuration. And we need to change the run width. Yep, context. I think there's something, this remote should be deleted also. Right now, our project should work, and we should have an AMP that is building and working. Actually, no, if we go to the anatomy of an AMP, what we will see how an AMP is created, and we missed under the AMP folder, the module properties, we will need to set up the version on which the AMP will work, the repository version. So I'm going to use 6.0. That's free because we're going to install it on a community. And let's be max version, let's be 699. I'm going to build this again. It will take a second. Great. Now we can go on to our target folder and see that we have an AMP here, which is the demo AMP 1.0 snapshot. And I want to proceed with installing this AMP. We'll be getting back later to running the integration test on this project. So as I mentioned in the introduction, if we go to the ACS packaging project, under the docs folder, there are 3 MD files. But two of them are with create the custom image. Let's go to both of them. We're going to take this approach first. So the first approach is to create a customized Docker image using this project. We're actually going to use the ACS community packaging. It's the same. The steps are the same. And what you have to do is just to add the dependencies, the dependency of your artifact, and into the copy resource AMP section, again, you need to add the artifact. And this will build an image that contains your artifact. Okay, in this other IntelliJ, I have the ACS community packaging project. It's inside a bigger project. And in the POM, we're going to add a dependency. I think there's one here that needs to, yeah. I've did this in the past, so sorry. We're going to add, this is our AMP. We're going to add our AMP here, there. So what we'll need is the artifact ID, version, and group ID here. So dependency, write this. And we need to specify the type of this file, which will be on AMP. Actually, what I'm doing right now, because I've built the AMP locally, it will take it from my local Maven repository. And as it was specified in the documentation, we need to search for, let's go again to the documentation, copy resources AMPs. Let's go again, the ACS packaging project, copy resources AMPs. Here, we need to add an artifact ID with our AMP. I'm going to override the one that was previously there. It's or that tech talk live, and the artifact ID will be the demo AMP. Now we can go into the ACS community packaging, the whole project. We can open a command line here. Before doing this, we should. So how does this project builds a Docker image? We're using a plugin named Fabricate. So it's a Fabricate Maven plugin. For this plugin, we have some profiles, and each profile is representative to a certain build configuration. And we're going to use the community Docker profile. This only builds an image, and this image will be built, and it will stay locally. We also have some profiles like internal, which builds an image and will push it to our internal repository, the master. So you'll see the latest images both on content repository and on content repository community. This profile actually builds 2 images and push them with the latest tags on our repository that we use. So can be a little bit bigger. What does the community Docker profile does? It actually builds an image, and because Maven works in a way that it concatenates the artifact if it's in the build and in the profile, we're going to build an image which has an image name based on the Docker file, which is in the base tier. The Docker file we don't need to worry about that right now. But the image name is a property, which is at the top of this project, and we should give an image name like, let's go TechTalk Live, my secret amp. And I'm going to save this. And into the ACS into packaging, we're going to do a maven clean install -p community docker. It will actually build the whole project. So if we, this will take like a minute to build. We can take a look into the Docker Alfresco project. So actually, what we are doing, we're bringing the Alfresco ware, the server root, the database connector, all the amps and all the files that you'll need to install for that you previously installed using the distribution zip, and based on the Docker file that's in the Docker Alfresco project here, we're installing PDF renderer, ImageMagick, and if we go a little bit lower, you will see that we're going to just put the where it should be. We're going to install the, can I encoding to this? Can I change the encoding? Not encoding, sorry, the language. Yes, more nicer. So we actually have a lot of comments on what each of these instruction is doing. So what interests us is that we bring the amp in the target /amps, and we're going to put it on Docker machine, and using the Alfresco MNT tool, we're going to install it. This build failure, yay.
This is because we didn't do a sacrifice for the demo goals.
Yes, apparently, yes. EZQ build. Okay. Am I bringing correctly? Let me check the target folder. So in the target folder, we have under the amps, it is an amp, okay. And if we unpack it, it looks like a normal amp. Great. Let me, it's a little bit smaller and to see. What we can do,
it seems to be is returning a non-zero code.
Yes, hopefully. What we can do to better identify the errors that usually appear here, we're going to use the Docker to build, using the Docker file that we have into the Docker Alfresco project to build the image. And we're going to see at what step does this fail, and you'll see a better error.
Seems to be a good exercise.
Okay, so the project artifact ID is incorrect, and this is something that is in our demo amp. Wow. Did I? No, this one. Did I save this? Are the characters okay? Module repo version. Let me build again the what is? I should build again the demo amp, and maybe I didn't save something, which I'm going to verify right now if everything is saved. No. Okay. What does it says? have any Docker containers that are running? No. Again with the same error. So it's saying that actually my module ID. What don't you like about this? Bad. Okay, I'm going to come back to this one. Let's switch to the. This was not planned. I'm going to get back to this one shortly, maybe at the end. So let's go to the second way. The second way is create a customized Docker image using an existing Docker image, and for this one, we're going into our demo amp folder, and we're going to create a Docker file. Well, I'm going to not create a Docker file, and I'm going to start. You can do this also from the Docker file that is inside the Docker Alfresco from the ACS community packaging project. And I'm going to edit this one. Again, a matter of preference. I like to see the comments. And I'm going to start actually from the Alfresco content repository community image. And I'm not sure about the latest tag. Let's check it on hub.docker.com. Alfresco. So the latest tag is 607-GA. So I'm going to use this one. And I'm not interested in most of these things. What I'm trying actually to do here is to copy the amp and install it. And our amp is located into target. So you need to put it relatively to the path of the Docker file. Let's get this amp here. So we're going. This is on our local machine. Let's put with big star there. And we're going to install it. I don't want to install the whole amps. I just want to install my demo amp like this, that amp file. And this is not the directory. And I have this Docker file here that will take content repository community image, and it will be an image which will have my amp in it. And let's build a Docker build dot with a tag like Fresco TTL image. Okay, so you need to be authenticated on Docker Hub to get that image PowerShell. Build. Okay. And why? Let me check again.
Someone say that the community is seeing an eye, probably a typo or I don't know.
Yes,
yeah,
it is a typo.
So okay, thank you, Vitor,
yeah.
Viper, I don't know how to pronounce his name.
Thank you for that. So the project artifact ID apparently is invalid. I did something bad when I created. Why don't you like demo amp?
You're fast, Alex.
Sorry, yeah. I'm getting.
I'm teasing.
Sorry, I'm getting the same error. So I did something bad when I created this amp file. Let me change this to something else. I don't know why demo amp doesn't work. Tech Talk Live. Let's go like that. And
no, there is a typo in talk because otherwise probably, you know, talk is TALK.
oh, I'm going to try again. If not, we're going to use an AMP that is working, and I'm going to. This is the part when I actually need to only install the AMP. Oh yeah, so the demo AMP is now named. It's like this. Okay, project artifact ID. Great. I'm liking here. Okay. I'm going to, sorry for this, I'm going to switch to something that I did today, and what is actually, it contains the whole presentation. So it's the second part, actually going through this. This is another AMP that I've created today. It's on another group ID. It's org.my second name. I've named it the best AMP ever. And I've added dependencies, the Alfresco repository, the Alfresco remote API that we're going to need for the AMP to build, and the JUnit and Spring that were previously added just for the demo component test class to work. So let's build this AMP. It is like AMP ever. So
in the meantime, we are having suggestions in the chat, but I think it's better if you go on your path. Then probably at the end, if you want, you can go back and try to solve the problem. For example, Rodisa suggested to open the AMP archive and check the values from the module properties. But again, my suggestion is to go ahead and at the end come back and try to solve it. If you agree, Alex.
Yes. So different folder, best AMP ever. It's 19 kilobytes as the other AMP. Let's switch to the other method using the ACS community packaging. So we're going to replace, again, I'm moving fast, the demo AMP, the artifact, we're going to replace with the one that we just built, and the version also. Okay, and it was also as a dependency. Okay, and we can let's try to do. It won't work because so we actually need to build the whole ACS community packaging again, and mvn clean install, and run the p community Docker community to build the Docker image, and this should work. Meanwhile, we can look into the AMP that I've just opened. So we're going through all of what is here. Again, we have the Nexus, the public repository. We have the resource folders added here, the Alfresco Maven plugin, and then just 2 plugins that we're going to use to run integrations tests. This will help us run the integrations test. and for this plugin, some dependencies that are only in the test context. Okay, so now we're starting to create our Docker image. So I'm creating TTL my secret amp with the latest tag. Yay, we have it. This is the image that I have just created. We're going to not this folder. Into the Alfresco extensions, I have created the Docker Compose folder, and inside it's a Docker Compose YAML file. What this actually is, let's move things that we're going to add later. What this actually is, it's a Docker Compose file that will find onto the this one is from the ACS community deployment project. Let's go to it. So this is on GitHub. ACS community deployment project, and under the Docker Compose folder, this is a preference deployment for our Docker Compose. It's the simplest deployment that you can have, and we recommend take this deployment and add to it. So I'm going to save this and start an Alfresco just to see that our amp was installed. Sure. There's no tricks in my sleeve. Okay, so the 4 images will start up. We can take a look into the Docker Compose. I'm using as Alfresco the image that I've just built. It's in the ACS packaging project. I'm using a Postgres 10.1, Solar 6. Some of these images are not the latest ones. They are updated on every release of the ACS packaging product. So we recommend on choosing an existing tag there. Yeah, so let's see if Alfresco has started up. Alfresco is on port 8082. Maybe we can close some of these ones. Yes. So we're waiting a minute for Alfresco to start. I'm going to drink a.
So you're using here. So back in the GitHub repository, I see a tag 607. You used also a tag 608. I saw in the previous packaging. It's not a big deal, but just to highlight this.
So when you are using the ACS packaging project to build the amp, if you have the dependent, so why am I not showing this project? So you need to make sure that all the dependencies are up to date. So if you do a fork or have this project cloned, make sure that when you build the image, you do a git pull. This will actually build a snapshot image. If you want to, you need to change the project version to build an image that is not snapshot. This actually builds like a 608 snapshot, and what you have saw the 607, which is in here, is the community release that we did a few days ago, I think. Okay, so Alfresco is just starting. Great. So Alfresco has started. As I mentioned before, our amp, it's the same amp, has a hello world web script that we will be able to see in the web scripts that are available on Alfresco. So let's browse all the web scripts. And as you can see, the first script is the hello world sample web script. And if we click on it, it works. Also, another way of seeing that your amp is installed, there are a lot of ways. I'm going to open Postman here. We have under the Alfresco API Explorer, this is a test server that is up all the time. So we're going to use a V1 REST API. A lot of sections here. So under the Discovery API, you'll see that you can use a get on /discovery, and you'll retrieve the capabilities and detailed version information from the repository. And I'm going to do that request. I'm going to my Alfresco server is on localhost 8082, and as you can see, I have the community 608, and the install modules that I have. They are the default AOS, the Google Docs, and here, as we can see, is the AMP that I've just created. It is installed, so we have the install state. For example, the trash can cleaner is in an unknown state because it's not an AMP, it's in the source code, but it is installed. It is here. We have the installation date, which is a few minutes ago. Yeah, so this is a way to install the amps. Let me kill the environment, the Docker Compose environment. The second way of so to using the second way, creating a customized Docker image using an existing Docker image. Why this exists? Exists because sorry, you may have some amps that require additional configurations. So actually have two sections here. One is applying an amp that doesn't require additional configuration. It's what we did. You can do this with the ACS packaging project, and creating a Docker file. As you can see here, creating a Docker file, and in the Docker file is use the image that you want, copy the amp to the amp's location, and then just install the amp. And yeah, I've shown how to do this. But there may be some amps that require additional configuration. For here, we have an example for the Alfresco SAML module, which will require of some files, and we have, for example, we can use this folder hierarchy. So we have an amp that is for repository, an amp that is for share, and we're going to put the amp file in a folder there, and we need SSL for this one. And we have the key store, trust store. We're going to need some, the SAML certificate isn't here, but we're going to need the SAML key store also. And the share custom config, because the modification that we need to do to the share custom config is the CSRF protection. It's very long. You cannot do a set command. So here is an example of creating a Docker file for the Alfresco repository image. Again, we have added comments to what you need to do. It's becoming a little bit more complex, but it's the same way of doing. Yep. We have killed our Docker Compose environment. The next thing I want to show is actually how to put the Alfresco environment in debug. So we have into the Docker, into any packaging project, under the Docker Alfresco, you'll see a folder that is test. This is not the test.m, sorry, the Docker Compose.yaml file I wanted to open. We use these Docker Composes file to run certain tests on it, and they are configured for some certain test environments. And you can see here that under the Catalina ops, you'll have the command required to put Tomcat into the debug mode, and we're going to add this to our Docker configuration. Okay, this. And we also need to add the port. I'm using, as specified here, the port 8000. So I'm going to add it to our Docker Compose, and please be careful to indentation because errors may occur there. And now what we need to do is to start our environment. Meanwhile, in the AMP, in the Hello World web script, I have put a breakpoint. when we're going to access this web script. And when the what I did also in IntelliJ, into the edit configurations, I have created a remote configuration, which points at port 80,000 onto localhost. The host is localhost, and that's it. And when the Alfresco will be up, we're going to show that this is working. Again, it will take a minute. Having a glass of water or a bottle of water mix.
But breathe a little bit because we are running very fast, but lots of discussion. No, that's fine. Lots of discussion. At the end, I would like to share a couple of thoughts that in the YouTube chat we are having, but after you had some water, of course, and you take your time, one question that you can probably take now is about a confirmation if this approach that you are showing here is valid for Community Edition, Enterprise Edition, or both. But take your time again.
It is valid for both.
So in the meantime, just to let you breathe, and feel free to stop me, Alex. One discussion very interesting about the volumes. So I mean, one question where if this approach, so which are the performance and the impact having the volumes configured in the way that you were showing. Let me say, I reply in the chat and I gave a feedback to the guys. And first of all, thank you for this question. That of course, what we are discussing today is more related to the development task. So this question is more about the deployment in a production or into a test environment, and I would like to remind, as Axel was saying at the very beginning, that this approach using Docker is not suggested for production environment. Because we suggested to use the Kubernetes stuff for the production environment, and the Docker stuff is suggested to be, for example, to be used for the development. But just to share another similar discussion that we had in the previous webinar about the introduction of the deployment, you might be interested to hear that webinar, because in that webinar we had some question and discussion around this topic of the volumes. Apologize, Alexandru, if you want to go ahead, let me know. Otherwise, I can take also another discussion just to let you breathe a little bit and give you some time.
I can continue with this.
Okay, thank you.
So the Alfresco has just started up. And are going to our project, our AMP, and using the remote connection, we're going to debug. And it is connected to our Docker Alfresco. I'm just going to wait a little bit to process the classes. And we're going to show that this works, not the admin, sorry, the web script home. We're going to access the Hello World web script, and the IntelliJ should stop the Alfresco from doing anything, and it should let us debug what's happening. So this is ready. Going to the Al web scripts, and I'm going into our Hello World web script. As you can see here, the Alfresco detected that we're trying to access this this part of the code, and from here we can start debugging. So debugging on Docker Compose, it's really easy. I'm actually going to stop this, and as you can see, when I stopped it, the web script continued. The next part should be on running integration tests. Switching back to the document, because it's a great read. At the test the code. So we are actually using two plugins for testing the code. We are using the Maven Surefire, which we're using for the unit test, and in our case, we're going to use the Maven failsafe, which we're going to use for the integration test. As my colleague specified here, all the integration tests we need to rename the classes from the termination of the class from the test. We need to rename it to IT. And the plugins will do their magic. What I did is the previous demo component test class. Can I close this thing? Yes. I have renamed it to demo component IT because here we have 3 integrations tests. And continue with the documentation. Let's do split screen again. Perfect. Here. We're going back to the pom.xml. In the pom, we're going to add PostgreSQL dependency because we're going to use Docker to bring up a Postgres, and we need also the Postgres driver to connect to there, the database. And we have the Postgres. So after the repository and remote API, I have also added again the repository and remote API as a dependencies, but with a different classifier. The classifier is tests and the scope is test. Just to spin up the context that we need for running the integration test. As I previously added JUnit, Spring, and now here we have the Postgres. We're going to use the same version that is here, 9.4.12.12. And then we're going to add the Maven failsafe plugin. A little bit down. Here is the Maven failsafe plugin. The configuration actually, it depends on the use case. The copy paste on, where is it? Yeah, here it is. I actually needed to add a DB username and a DB password to work. So this on the failsafe, we're going to continue. We're going to set as system property variables the database connections and the path to the Alf data. This will run into the integration test phase, and then we need to add the Fabricate, the Docker Maven plugin. What does this? It's also here. This actually will spin up a Postgres database on the. Here we're doing the port mapping. We're going to use it on port 5432. And here we set the username, the password, and the Postgres, the database name, and we're going to set this the variable of max connections to 300. It is recommended to be at least 250, I think. And this should be, this should make the integration test work. For a fact, I know that they work. You can do a Maven validate, and here we can see that database will start up. Okay, the validate is okay. Let's do a clean install without skipping the tests. And here we're going to typo. This will take like for this project it will take like 2 minutes.
No problem, Alex. I have tons of questions coming from the chat if you want.
No, yeah, 1 minute. As you can see here, the using the Docker Maven plugin, we have started the Postgres container. I did a Docker PS here, and as you can see, our Postgres container is up. And this will take like 2 minutes, and we should see that the tests are passing. Yeah, I think we can look into the questions.
Okay, thank you for that. So, as usual, an interesting topic, so interesting discussion. So one question, and tell me, Alexandru, if you want to take the question, we can reply together. I will raise the question for the audience, and then we will try to reply as the best, as usual. We touched the topic that Docker is suggested for development or testing, is not suggested for production. For production, is suggested Kubernetes. So the question came, well, why are we using Docker? So why we don't go straight to Kubernetes stuff and have Kubernetes own threat? Do you want to take the question? Do you want me to take the question?
Yes, because as a developer, I ask myself this question also. So from my experience with Docker, it's pretty fast. Docker is pretty fast. You can spin up a Docker environment in a minute. You can also do it Kubernetes, but I'm a Java developer also. I'm not experienced DevOps, so it will be harder for me to set up a cluster, a Helm cluster. It will take more time, and it's harder to debug on Helm, because usually when you do a Helm deployment, you'll put a proxy, you'll put some rules, and Docker Compose, it's simple. It can be used not only by me, but by the whole compose. So you don't need to have that great knowledge of DevOps part. It's simple to understand. And as you can see, our deployment projects, we try to keep it as simple as possible. The idea of the Docker Compose, why do we use for testing? Fast, really customizable. Everybody can do this. And for new people that are trying to test the new features of Alfresco, the fastest way is to use the Docker Compose. So the Docker Compose, it's not recommended for a full in production deployment, but just you want to test a few features. You have Docker installed, you get the Docker Compose from ACS deployment, you run a command, and Alfresco is up. So the prerequisites are actually a lot less than you are required for Helm and Kubernetes deployment. If you want to add something, Francesco, maybe I'm missing.
No. Thank you for the clarification. Very complete. I only say in the chat it is lighter, but this is exactly what you explained in few words. Do you want to also take this? It's another interesting question, if you can, because I see the build has been successful, and this is the goal. So, what about other kinds of databases? So, I mean, you're showing Postgres, but what about MySQL, for example, or in case of enterprise, Oracle or other supported, of course, database? I don't know if you have a complete answer, but if you want to take this, could be helpful.
I'm not sure about the official release. The official stack, the supported stack for Docker. From what I've tested in the past, we actually did I think it was on Docker, not on Helm. So they should work, but I'm not sure if all of them are actually fully supported. So we need to wait for the 6.0 documentation to get out and see the supported stacks.
I am aware. Probably I can help in this case. What I can say is that the team started from Postgres, and of course it planned and is planning to cover the complete supported set of databases. So I mean, once the GA release will be officially released and will be out, of course, we will be able to support all the stacks, the supported stack. The Postgres stuff is the first of our series of supported stacks, as far as I know.
Yes.
Does it have sense, Alex?
Yes.
Okay, cool. We don't have. So let me say, I would like to share another thought, but I can take this at the end of your presentation. So if you can continue on your path.
I've stopped my share screen. I can do something which is hopefully it will work for it's at risk. I didn't prepare this, so I prepared only to the integration test part. What is an interesting thing that we can do right now is trying to let's say we have an AMP and trying to automate the building of a Docker image by Maven. So we actually, what I want to do is actually I want to add to the AMP here. I want to add the Fabricate plugin, and with the Docker file that is inside where it is. No, yeah. So using the there's no Docker file here. We're going to add a Docker file here. So actually, how the ACS packaging project works, I want to add the Fabricate here and show you how simple it is to add it. Again, as a point of references, we're going to go to the ACS packaging project and scroll. Yes, this is the packaging project, sorry. And scroll down. I'm not looking into the right poem. Yeah, sorry. And we're going to copy the Fabricate. We're going to copy the configuration for the Fabricate plugin. And we're going to add it into our AMP right before the plugins. So we have added Fabricate. Let's hard code some values like image name. Let's use. I usually forget the image names, so just we're going to use the Docker file that is in this folder. And we're not going to use profiles here. We're actually going to concatenate and create a single profile. So we need to add the executions part, which is missing. It should be, I'm not sure. Version, yeah, the execution, sorry. It should be here. We're going to build an image, but what I want to do is actually set the version for the Fabricate. Please take, we had problems with the different version of Fabricate. We're going to use Fabricate 3.5.37. I think we tried with the 38 and we had problems with it. We couldn't build the Docker image. We had some errors. And what do we need right now? So this is a duplicate, sorry. I have here, I added the Fabricate Maven plugin, which we use it to build Docker images. I have set up the version, the name of the image, and I've set it on the install phase, build the Docker image based on this Docker file. We don't have this Docker file, but we're just going to create this Docker file. Let's start from an existing Docker file, because I don't like to start from scratch. Docker file, yes. So, I didn't have one. I had one, yeah, but it was in the other AMP. So our AMP is not this one, this time. Into the target, we're going to take our AMP name. We're going to copy, and I'm using this star hard code version. But if you're doing multiple releases, I think the star will just do. And this should do it. So we are into the AMP, and if we run an mvn clean install, we should have integrations test, and also we should have a Docker image build. But I expect it to fail. I expected you'll need an extra file, which is if you go into the Docker Alfresco, you'll have this Docker ignore, and you say which folder to ignore, and we're going to ignore. Actually, when we are building the Docker image, let me show the logs. When we are building the Docker images, the Fabricate plugins tries to put the files inside the target folder and then tries to unpack it using the target folder and somehow try to unpack itself. And you need to just put, in some cases, you need to put .docker ignore and put the folder of where the fabricate will pack the things. And now we're waiting for a minute again.
Consider that you're waiting, we have more questions. So a discussion has been about the supported list and stack of DBs, especially in the Enterprise Edition. I recommend to check in the support portal once the GA release will be final release, or to raise a ticket if you are a partner or customer, because we are talking about enterprise release, because we don't have a full stack. Andrea Rebecca jumps in the call to discuss about the fact that probably DB2 will not be supported, considering the previous version of Alfresco. But again, this is something that we can confirm. I don't know if you're aware, Alexandru, but probably we are not the right person to ask right now in this call, of course. Yes. But of course, the answer is clear. It's only that we have to ask the right person. Another interesting discussion is why we should start from that Docker file and instead of having a sort of an image containing everything except for the words. So the question is if Alfresco plan to provide a similar image, so a sort of special tagged image that has everything except for the words, or not.
Yes. Actually, an image like that exists. So if we go to, so it failed, as I said. If we go to the ACS, the packaging projects, if we look into the Docker file, you will see that we are at the top of the Docker file. We are starting actually from the Alfresco-based Tomcat image. What does the Alfresco-based Tomcat image is exactly? It contains exactly Tomcat and Java. And I think Tomcat is because it's in secure mode. It's starting in secure mode and has some security features already implemented in it, but it won't have the transformers. It won't have the wars. Actually, in the packaging projects, we are adding this. So if you want a plain vanilla Tomcat image, go with the base Tomcat. If you want only an image that contains Java, there's a base Java image. So you can find these images onto our, not this one, this one. Hub.docker.com. Let's go into the Alfresco organization. Yeah, I'm not part of it anymore. So just search an image that has Alfresco in front of it and click on it, and you'll have the whole Alfresco organization Docker Hub repository. And here is the base Tomcat image. I'm not sure if it has a description of what it contains. And it should be a base Java image. Actually, all of these images have a GitHub repository. So if you're curious and you want to build your own Tomcat image, you have the Docker file here. If you want to extend the Docker, if you want to extend the Tomcat image, maybe there's something of a security that some vulnerability that you discover, you can do a pull request to the base Tomcat image and add it. So actually, these images exist and they are open source, so you'll find them onto the GitHub.
Thank you for the clarification. The discussion is more, so again, what you are showing is really valuable and appreciated also from the people that raised the question. The discussion is continued that probably a sort of layer having everything Alfresco needs except for the war could be helpful, but again, it's something that probably doesn't exist yet, but it's something that we can think about it, or it's it's something that also the community or department can provide. I mean, it's in the next iteration. I don't know how many time more you need, Alexandru.
I'm on mute. Sorry. So if I find my mouse. Here, yes, as I said, the tar file contained it itself. So we need to add to our AMP. Let me copy the docker ignore file here. And we need to ignore the target and docker, yeah. So actually what happens, the fabricate into the docker folder, it actually brings all it needs to build the AMP. And we need to ignore that. So into the docker ignore, we're going to use ignore test/docker. And this should work. This should build a Docker image. So after you run the integration test, you'll build automatically builds a Docker image. Yeah. So I think after this finishes, if there are
in the meantime, one question that probably is not strictly related to this topic is about the engines, the ingress layer on top of the digital business platform, mainly on the enterprise edition. So the question is if it's mandatory to use Nginx ingress gateway or solution on top of the digital business platform, or we can use something else. I don't know if you have the question, if you have the answer, Alexandru. I am aware that it is not mandatory, but probably we have to have a broader discussion with Ray Gauss probably or the platform team representative. Do you have any information on that?
Actually, no. From what I know, the what we ship in the ACS deployment projects are a reference deployment. We know that this will work.
Okay. Could be a topic for the office hour, especially if the platform, someone from the platform team will join. In the past, we have had Brian Remington, we have had Ray Gauss, and so it could be a topic for the office hour or for a direct contact. Write me, please, Stefan, if you want a more complete and affordable or reliable answer for sure. Sorry, Alexandru, you tell me, you can go ahead.
Okay, so I have the same error. There's which folder am I? Target Docker. Yeah, so I think I'm going to look into this, and I'm going to commit this. Also, the presentation will be available. I'm going to talk with Francesco. I think we'll put it on a blog post, and I'm going to put this example on a GitHub repo, and I'm going to look into.
Would be great.
And this will be also posted there. So if you want an example of what we have done. And an example that is working, it will be available. And I'm also going to look into this Docker ignore file and add more comments to the POM XML and explain a little bit of what each artifact and each dependency that we bring, why we need it. I think that's all for today, at least from my side.
Well, we stress you a lot, and you gave us a complete journey inside the technical stuff. Thank you very much, Alexandru. Really, really helpful and complete. Let me share something with with you guys, but for sure with the audience. Last time we did a webinar on the new deployment mechanism. Probably we didn't cover everything, but it's a first webinar and we want to do more. This time we talk more about development using Docker. We know that there are lots of things that we should cover and lots of things that we must share with you. But we would recommend to have from you some kinds of guidance. What would you like to see more in the future? Because of course we can invent, we can do other topics randomly, but if you tell us what you would like to see, would be probably more helpful for everyone. This is only my final contribution, and thank you all for the energy, especially for you, Alexander, and the question and the discussion. But looking forward to discuss more. The microphone to Kristen.
So, and we can continue these discussions in the community. Feel free to go in there and post questions. And Alexandru was going to put together that list that you saw of resources at the beginning. He was going to put together a blog so you can reference some of the things he was referencing in this presentation. I know we're over on time, so I'm going to go ahead and call this for today, but I would love to see everybody at office hours tomorrow if you're available. We'll be there. There's no presentations, no slides. Just come and chat, and we'll keep you posted on the next Tech Talk Live. Thanks, everybody. Have a good one.